Welcome to the Canada News with your host Divya Rai. Now let's take a look on the headlines. The world's second biggest country by landmass is effectively running out of space, and that has Canada on course for a reckoning. The country's privacy commissioner said they want to ensure that privacy is considered at the earliest opportunity as part of any discussions about vaccine passport development. Andrea Harwood once again raised the issue of families and elderly people who have died in long-term care homes. Now news in detail. In Canada, buying a home has long been seen as the surest path to middle-class security. The world's second biggest country by landmass is effectively running out of space, and that has Canada on course for a reckoning. The dream of a detached home and a piece of land which generations of Canadians have taken for granted and which continues to entice new immigrants may soon be out of reach in the places where people want to live. They could force an expansion of the idea of home to include condos and rental, potentially transforming how the middle class does everything from raising families to saving for retirement. According to a government data compiled by Bloomberg, 60% of new housing stock is apartments and just 25% detached houses. That mismatch has forced desperate bidders to view for an increasingly constrained supply of single-family homes. In a joint statement posted, the country's privacy commissioner said they want to ensure the privacy is considered at the earliest opportunity as part of any discussions about vaccine passport development. The commissioner said that a vaccine passport presumes that individuals will be required or requested to disclose personal health information, namely their vaccine or immunity status. While this may offer substantial public benefit, it is an encroachment on civil liberties that should be taken only after careful consideration. The commissioners said vaccine passport must be developed and implemented in the compliance with the applicable privacy laws. Andrea Harwood, the leader of the opposition in the Ontario Legislative Assembly, has once again raised the issue of the families of elderly people who have died in long-term care homes, raised the issue with the government, and she said that the elderly people died due to dehydration. In response, the government House leader said that the historic investment made by the government has been made to improve the condition of long-term care homes.
There are hundreds of families and residents of long-term care watching across Ontario today, and they're demanding answers from the Ford government. And so we've offered to put their questions to the government today, and hoping on their behalf and our own that the Premier and the Minister of Long-Term Care will answer those questions. And the first one is from Sherry Coulson-Hutchinson in Wyerton, and Sherry says this: I've been watching with horror how this government has ignored conditions in long-term care homes even after the military said that residents were dying not just with COVID, but because they were dehydrated, starving, and lying in their own urine and feces. So on behalf of Sherry and so many others, Speaker, why did the Premier break his promise of justice and a full investigation of those deaths from neglect and dehydration?
To reply, Government House Leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. As I've said on a number of occasions, not only for Sherry, but for all the people of the province of Ontario, Mr. Speaker, we certainly were put on the defence during the first phase of this battle with COVID, Mr. Speaker. That is, of course, why even prior to the pandemic, we began to reform the long-term care system in the province of Ontario. We began renovating those outdated homes that still had ward beds. We put in thousands of additional spaces throughout the province of Ontario. We knew that there was also an issue with staffing in the sector, Mr. Speaker. That's why we began a study into the staffing. What were the issues that were being faced? Of course, we increased pay. We knew that pay was an issue. We increased pay for the PSWs through pandemic pay, Mr. Speaker. That work continues not only before but during and after. Obviously, when we had vaccines, despite the shortfall in the early months when we had vaccines, the very first people that we vaccinated were those people in our long-term care homes. There is a lot of work left to be done, Mr. Speaker, and we will continue that work for future generations.
Brampton Centre MPP Sarah Singh has also raised the issue of the death of a nurse serving in long-term care homes in the Assembly, in which she questioned the performance of the government. Long-term care homes have been neglected for 15 years, which has led to the epidemic.
Speaker, thousands of Ontarians are watching today, and every single one of them deserves answers from Conservatives and this Premier. Susan Barrell is one of those speakers, and here's what she has to say. I'm raising my voice in memory of my mom, Vivian Barrell. My mom passed away on April 15th, 2020. She was alone for a month before her passing. I was at my mom's side for 12 years except for the last month. My mom was a registered nurse who provided exemplary care to her patients. She did not deserve to die the way she did. I fought for 12 years bringing issues within the long-term care sector to the attention of management. I was lied to repeatedly and promised that these things would change. It only got worse. Please be responsible and fix the long-term care system." End quote. Speaker, after decades of Liberal neglect, Conservatives have only made the crisis in long-term care even worse. When will this government listen to people like Suzanne and take responsibility and start fixing Ontario's broken long-term care system?
Government House Leader.
Well, I thank the member for that question, Mr. Speaker, because it highlights what we have been talking about for weeks in this place. And Suzanne, in her email, I suspect to the member, highlights it much more effectively than I ever could have. For 12 years, she had been working and expressing some of the problems that we found when we took over, when the people gave us the awesome responsibility and the privilege of governing in 2018. And exactly what Susan has talked about is what we found, Mr. Speaker, that there was not enough staff. There had to be a staffing strategy. There were not enough homes. So we moved very quickly to build 30,000 new spaces. I had a 118-year waiting list in my riding, Mr. Speaker, for long-term care. Unacceptable in one of the richest provinces in the country, if not North America, Mr. Speaker. We could do better. But that's what these reports highlighted for us, whether it was the Auditor General or the Commission of Inquiry, that for decades leading up to this, Mr. Speaker, and in particular over the last 15 years, the lack of investments, the lack of attention by the previous Liberal government made it even more difficult to address the pandemic. But we won't stop, Mr. Speaker. We'll get the job done for future generations.
Ontario's Minister of Labour, Training and Skills Development, Monty McNaughton, discussed workplaces and the province's latest inspection situation during the COVID-19 pandemic. He thanked workers on the front line during the corona pandemic. He also praised the work of factory workers during the epidemic.
I'm happy to be here to share that our efforts are working. COVID-19 case counts are steadily coming down, and over 7 million people have now been vaccinated. Thank you to everyone doing their part to help pull us through. Clearly, there is light at the end of the tunnel. It hasn't been easy. We've all worked hard to get here, and we should take pride in what we've all accomplished together. Our frontline workers, who don't have the luxury of staying home, are a big part of Ontario's success. To these heroes, we say thank you. Thank you to the factory workers for making the goods that all of us rely on. Thank you to the truck drivers for keeping our supply chains running. And thank you to the grocery store workers keeping our shelves full. You are the hardworking champions that are getting us through this pandemic. Working together, workers, labor leaders, employers, and government, we are defeating this deadly virus. Only a few weeks ago, the numbers weren't looking so good. So we focused our efforts on where they were needed. Since then, over 100 officers have been visiting food processing plants, factories, warehouses, and distribution centers this month across the Greater Toronto and Hamilton area. And I'm pleased to share what we found. Workers wearing masks properly, increased cleaning protocols, and buildings with capacity limits. The numbers speak for themselves. In the past week, we visited over 700 workplaces as part of this campaign. 85% do not need a follow-up visit, and only 9 tickets were issued. This reinforces what we are seeing every day, that people are following the rules, and it's paying off.
Canada's Minister of Innovation and Science, Francois Philippe, has announced an investment of $200 million for the domestic production of a biotechnology manufacturing plant in Mississauga, Ontario. Manufacturing of domestic vaccines will be encouraged.
So I want to say thank you for joining us from wherever you might be virtually for a very, very important announcement, in fact, for the whole biomanufacturing sector across Canada. I want to say thank you, Ali. Thank you for the introduction, but more importantly, thank you for your great leadership and to be such a key member of our team in how you're doing things, in making sure that we across the nation can support our businesses, support our people, and support the ecosystem that we have here in Canada. I'm pleased to join you, Mr. Singhvi. I must say we had a very good conversation this morning. I am proud to say that you and I have already texted each other. That's a good start, I must say, in how we want to do business. And thank you for joining us, I think, from Boston today to celebrate an important investment for Mississauga, for Ontario, and indeed for whole of Canada. And we're very, very proud to be with you today. As you may have seen, ladies and gentlemen, throughout the pandemic, our government's objectives have been clear. First, to protect the health and safety of Canadians. Secondly, to building the resiliency and the growth for the future. And let me set the stage when it comes to Canada's biomanufacturing capacity. As we have all seen, our biomanufacturing sector in Canada has been in decline for at least the last 4 decades. In fact, since 1980s, we had seen a number of companies leave Canada with the result of a lack of domestic capacity at scale, which is in fact needed to attract the production of COVID-19 vaccine. But one thing is clear is that Canada is well positioned to grow its leadership in the life sciences sector.
British Columbia Premier John Horgan has announced a $50 million package for the province's tourism sector and the tour bus companies during the COVID-19 epidemic. He said that this fund has been released to expand the tourism sector this summer.
Good morning, everyone. John Horgan here on the traditional territory of the Lekwungen-speaking people, the Esquimalt and Songhees First Nation. And I'm joined here today by Minister Melanie Mark and Jonathan Burke, the board chair of the H.R. MacMillan Space Centre. As we all know, the days are getting warmer and a little bit longer, and over 55% of eligible British Columbians have received their first vaccine. Now, while we still need to bear down against the pandemic, all signs are pointing to positive days ahead this coming summer. We have challenges to be sure, but we need to focus for the next number of days on following rules, making sure we're not traveling unnecessarily, and hoping for a better future coming after the May long weekend. Everybody in BC, of course, has fond memories of visiting and working at BC's major tourism attractions. From museums to amusement parks to science centres, these sites are part of BC's world-renowned tourism industry. And right now, people in tourism are hurting. In fact, few sectors have been hit as hard by COVID-19 as the tourism sector. Many of our major tourism attractions, as we all know and love, are struggling, and we need to make sure we're there for them. The effects, of course, are far-reaching, not just on those anchor attractions, but to the many communities that depend on tourism landmarks to have people coming through their community to boost the local economy and bring visitors to town. They provide many young people with their first jobs. I worked on the Coho Ferry, a tourism operation from Port Angeles to Victoria when I was in high school, telling people how to get to Butchart Gardens when they came off the ferry. And I'm not alone. Many, many other British Columbians had the same experience, their first job, and also an introduction to how important it is to welcome back visitors to our province. But not just yet. It's not far off, but we need to stay vigilant and we need to be mindful that our international borders remain closed and there are public health orders in place to restrict non-essential travel.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said corona vaccine campaign is in full swing in Canada, adding that 4.5 million doses of Pfizer vaccine are being provided in Canada this week. He also said as it is underway in Canada, Canada is at the top of G20.
This week, we're receiving 4.5 million vaccine doses, including a shipment from Pfizer that has been moved up ahead of the holiday weekend. 4.5 million doses is our largest weekly shipment to date, and it'll help Canada keep within the top of the G20 on daily vaccinations, where we've been for over 2 weeks. In fact, because of the number of vaccines arriving, yesterday, Ontario announced that anyone over 18 can sign up for a vaccine appointment starting today. To everyone who's been waiting patiently so that your parents and grandparents could go first, thank you. Thank you for hanging in there, but also thank you for now booking your appointments. Hospitals, pharmacies, and healthcare staff are all doing an incredible job rolling out vaccines to everyone. So I want to give another big shout out to all frontline workers who are part of this effort. With millions of vaccines arriving each week, getting doses into arms is a true Team Canada effort. With the leadership of people like Brigadier General Krista Brody, who's now heading up vaccine logistics and operations at the Public Health Agency, we're going to get this done. Brigadier General Brody had already played a key role in the vaccine rollout with the Public Health Agency. She, along with the team that's been there since day one, is ready and able to get millions of doses to Canadians in the coming weeks. On that note, this morning, I also want to share some very positive news about our vaccine deliveries for the summer. I can confirm that we'll receive 9 million doses of the Pfizer vaccine in June alone. That means that between now and at least the end of July, we'll continue to get over 2 million Pfizer doses a week.
Dr. Theresa, Canada's Chief Medical Officer, spoke about the COVID-19 outbreaks in Canada. She said the situation of coronavirus in Canada is improving every day. The outbreak of the movement is still going on, she said, adding that about 3,000 patients are recovering from the hospitals every day.
Nationally, disease activity continues to decline, but there are still some areas of Canada experiencing very high infection rates. Over the past 7 days, an average of 5,700 cases have been reported daily, and the number of people experiencing severe and critical illness remains elevated. On average, over 3,600 people with COVID-19 were being treated in our hospitals each day, including over 1,300 in intensive care units, and there were an average of 43 deaths reported daily. Nevertheless, we are making steady progress, with a 25% decrease in reported active cases since the peak of the third wave in mid-April. Last week, we had more encouraging news, including significant increases in vaccine supplies and expansion and innovation of vaccination programs across the country that are helping to protect as many Canadians as possible, faster. On Sunday, the Thorncliffe Park Vaccination Clinic in East York achieved a great milestone and a Canadian first in vaccine delivery by providing over 10,000 people with a dose of COVID-19 vaccine in less than 24 hours as a single clinic location. At the same time, regulatory and expert authorities in Canada continue to assess the evidence for safe, effective, and optimized use of COVID-19 vaccines in Canada. Following Health Canada's authorization of the Pfizer-BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine for use in children aged 12 to 15 years on the 5th of May, Canada's National Advisory Committee on Immunization has completed their expert review with new advice for federal, provincial, and territorial governments released today.
The province's health minister says decision is reopen the province will be made soon. She said she is working with the Chief Medical Officer of Health and medical experts to keep Ontario safe and open. When the plan will come out, Christine Elliott did not give a specific date or details. Instead, she said it would happen soon. She also said that it would be sector-wise. Meanwhile, Premier Doug Ford has confirmed that the process of opening up different parts of the province will not be in line with the color-coded framework. Quebec will announce its reopening plan today. It's likely the provisional premier has indicated that it will depend on the Saskatchewan reopening plan. Saskatchewan Chief Medical Officer Dr. David Williams has previously said he would like to see less than 1,000 cases a day before sanctions are lifted. That's all we have in this bulletin. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for more updated news.